Mob Psycho is inspirational, and that's not an uncommon thing to hear about anime. A lot of anime inspire a lot of people in many different ways, but I think what sets Mob Psycho apart is what exactly it inspires, or at least inspired in me, and the main message that I got from it. And what I mean by that is a lot of anime, Naruto, One Piece, Dragon Ball, a lot of their messaging is always follow your dreams, never give up. Your hard work will always pay off, or at least it'll pay off in the end. But what if you didn't know exactly what your dream was? What if you didn't know what you wanted to do? What if you didn't know how to interact with people in a normal, quote unquote, way? What if you had trouble just kind of existing in a way? What if you didn't truly know and understand yourself? Or even, what if you didn't know who you were? And even if you do figure out what you want to become and what you want to do, how do you start walking that path? What do you do to start becoming the person that you want to become and want to achieve? These are all things that Mob Psycho tackles, and I think it stands out as really inspiring because, again, a lot of anime just, they don't, they do it in very inspirational ways, and they all have their own ways of inspiring people, but Mob Psycho really tackles it in a way that feels real. Mob Psycho is set it pretty much like in a normal, quote unquote, setting. The only thing different about it from normal reality is there are psychics. But even that, like, it's not it's not portrayed in a way that they're out of place. Like, they exist in this world, but they're not really made a big deal. People know that psychics exist. People know that, like, there are people that have certain powers and can communicate with, like, spirits in certain ways, but it's not the focus of Mob Psycho society. For all intents and purposes, Mob Psycho society is just a normal, everyday kind of life experience, basically. And having the psychic stuff kind of be in the background until it's needed, mostly for character moments and for, like, really big fights and stuff, and most of the conflict in this show. But still, it's never truly the focus. What is the focus is people's interactions with each other, people's, like, feelings and how they portray themselves, and just a very personal story. We spend time with a lot of different characters, and while some are focused on a lot more than others, we still get personal conflicts and the relationship that characters have between each other and just with who is in their circle. We hear a lot of what characters want to do, who they hang out with, how they feel about people. Like, everything is focused on the characters in this show and their relationships. And that's nowhere more evident than in Mob himself, because even though he's the main character, in a way, in his own show, he's kind of treated as a side character in certain instances, especially like in the first episode. It's not until like I think halfway, maybe a little bit more than half into the first episode where we even see Mob, and his design is very different as opposed to other anime characters' designs, where they have a lot of standout features or personality traits, where Mob is just kind of this emotionless looking, monotone speaking kid. And he looks very unimpressive. But as the saying goes, don't judge a book by its cover. Just because he looks unimpressive doesn't mean that he is unimpressive, especially when it comes to the power that he's in control of. You know, he is pretty much the strongest psychic to exist, and yet all that power is packaged in this unimpressive looking middle schooler. For all intensive purposes, Mob is very much a blank slate to us, and we see how certain things in his past have affected him and how he's become this way. We see what influence characters in the present have an effect on him now and who he's shaping to be. His biggest goal for pretty much the whole show is just getting the attention of his crush. Really basic goal, especially for a middle schooler. But outside of that, he doesn't really have any other like goals that he wants to achieve. The only other thing of note is him working at Reagan's exorcism company. And while he's definitely using Mob for his powers and so that way he can run his business and get more clients and work, he's also there to mentor Mob in a way and teach him valuable lessons and how he should be. It's Reagan that tells Mob that just because you're a psychic and you have these powers and you can do these things, that doesn't make you special. That's now just another part of your character. It doesn't make you anything special. You still have to be kind and still have to work to make yourself impressive and make yourself who you want to be. Your powers don't make you. And that's really an important lesson because a lot of characters in this show hype themselves up on how powerful they are, or just because they're a psychic, they think they're special. In the first little mini arc of season 1, when Mob is fighting Hanazawa, blonde-haired kid, that's his whole thing, is Hanazawa thinks he's special and thinks that he can just run things because of how powerful he is, and because he's a psychic, because he's been gifted these powers, he thinks that he has like an authority over the weak, basically. And Mob openly just tells him, like, you know, your powers don't make you. You shouldn't use your powers to harm others. You should use them to help people and to make yourself stand out in a different way, not just abusing them. And it's a hard pill to swallow, and a lot of characters have to kind of go through this same kind of experience, because it's true. Just because you've been gifted with a talent for something doesn't automatically make you special. It just means that you have the ability to do this certain thing, or you're good at doing this certain thing. It doesn't make you anything. It's just kind of another character trait. Mob Psycho also shows how people have different effects and influence over others. Going back to that first example with Mob and Hanazawa, Mob literally has, like, after beating him, he has an effect on Hanazawa where he completely changes his outlook and his personality, and they become friends because Mob taught him a very important lesson and made him realize that, just because I have these powers doesn't mean that I'm special. And for another example, we see how that's a positive influence, but we can also see negative influences as well, even if they're unintentional. At the beginning, we see Mob's brother Ritsu. He's top of his class, he's part of the student council, he's really smart, he's everything that Mob kind of wants to be. And yet we see when Ritsu is alone, all he wants is to become a psychic and have powers like his brother. And part of that is that we learn because Ritsu, as kids, Ritsu was bullied and kind of beat up by these kids, and Mob broke and lost it. And that's kind of the whole changing point that we learn about in the beginning on why things are the way they are currently, at least in certain, like for Mob and Ritsu, because that whole interaction basically showed and scared Ritsu into the fact of, okay, well, my brother has these crazy powers, he just obliterated these people, and who's to say how much he can control it, and who's to say that something like this couldn't happen again and be far, far worse. So from that point on, Ritsu makes the change to always be the kind, like, helpful brother in ways that he can. He's always checking on Mob and asking him if he's okay, but it's really just to see how his emotions are and if he's going to snap. And we also see this is where Mob kind of shut out his emotions and kind of became how he is now because his power scared him. He didn't have control over anything, and he ended up hurting people, and he hurt his brother. And so he doesn't want to do that again. So if his emotions are tied to his powers, then he just, in his mind, he thinks, okay, well, I can't be super emotional or else my powers might get out of control again and I might end up hurting somebody. But by the end of the first season, and even more so later on, especially during the end, we see them change, and we see them actually start to form a proper relationship as brothers, instead of Ritsu kind of just tiptoeing around Mob and his powers, making sure that he's not going to burst and hurt anybody. And in the same respect, it's where Mob kind of starts opening up and starting to be able to feel his emotions again and feel like he can actually express them in a better way rather than just shutting them all off, so that way he doesn't hurt anybody. He starts allowing himself to feel his emotions and express his emotions after this point, and that it's okay to feel things, basically, because the last time, like, his emotions got the better of him, he hurt people. But that's not always going to happen, and it's normal for you to express your emotions. And I think it's kind of ironic, especially because of how easily this show makes you feel the way that it wants you to feel, when it's kind of just setting up where episodes are going, or things are just kind of more casual, it's a lot more laid back. When a fight is happening, you instantly feel the hype, the pressure, like the excitement, the rush. When this show wants you to laugh, it's going to make you laugh your ass off, because this show is extremely funny, and so many different characters have different quips and ways of making you laugh, and just, it can be so absurd, but that's part of its charm. When it wants you to feel sad, you're going to feel sad and heartbroken, and it's going to really kind of affect you. And when it wants you to look inwards and really take a look at yourself and kind of have like an introspective look at everything, it'll make you think and question things. And that's what I really like about it, and what I think makes Mob Psycho stands out, because it will make you feel all these different ways, and it'll make you kind of question things about your life and how you interact with people and how you feel about things and how you act. The show really makes a lot of things personal and can make you relate to a lot of different people in different ways, and that's one of the things that I really, really like about it. The show also has a great way of showing how seemingly meaningless like interactions can have big effects on you and your life. Two of the biggest are shown through Reagan and the Body Improvement Club. Again, this whole show, Mob's only goal basically is to get the attention of his crush. And in the first episode, we see him not really care about anything. He kind of gets dragged into this little dispute between the telepathy club and the student council, where they're trying to get him into the telepathy club so that way they don't have to disband. But the club that's moving into that room is the Body Improvement Club. And he thinks to himself, okay, well, I want to get stronger. Maybe that will get the attention of my crush. And so he joins the Body Improvement Club. And it's kind of just a simple, out of nowhere type of thing. It's really Mob's first step into taking initiative for himself, even without him knowing it, because from then on, the Body Improvement Club treat him like a brother, and he has influence over them as much as they influence him. Mob is very, very weak. He doesn't have a lot of stamina. He's not very physically built, which is part of the reason why he wants to join the club in the first place. And even throughout all of this, he struggles. We see him struggle during their training and stuff, and he's very unimpressive. But the Body Improvement Club doesn't discourage him. They don't, belittle him or anything of that nature. In fact, they push him. They're like, oh, okay, well, he's improving little by little. He did one more push-up than he did the other day. He ran a little bit longer than he did the other day. And their chant or whatever, fight on, fight on, fight on. It seems silly and it's funny to a certain extent, but the way I take it is keep pushing, keep going, keep going for what you want to achieve, and keep pushing yourself to do what you want to do. And that's kind of the whole influence that the Body Improvement Club has over Mob, is it makes him keep pushing and like keep trying to improve on himself because he has a goal in mind, and now he wants to work towards achieving that goal. And the other times that we see the Body Improvement Club like stick up for Mob and have his back, like when again Hanazawa is first introduced, we see them go after all the thugs and try and like rescue Mob, basically, even though he's not there yet. But in their heads, like, he's over there and they have to go get him because he's part of their team. They have to look out for him, especially because he's not as strong as them. And again, they don't look down on them for it, but they recognize that this is how it is, and because he's one of them, they have his back, and that kind of same sentiment is carried throughout multiple scenes throughout the seasons. So the Body Improvement Club treats him as one of their own and as a brother, and Mob acknowledges that and slowly starts to break out of his shell. And we see at the end of the series that, he becomes the vice captain of the Body Improvement Club. He's so into it at this point that he wants to like keep improving and he wants to keep pushing himself, and he kind of takes over what the older members, he's now having an influence on the newcomers, just as the old members had an influence over him, and now he's in their shoes. And obviously he's not as strong or as built as them still, but it's the fact of he's stuck with it, he's very much improved, and now he's kind of taking on the mantle, essentially. But the other thing that kind of happens from that whole interaction from the start is he meets the Telepathy Club, and the Body Improvement Club just needs the room to store their equipment and stuff in, and they have no problem with having the Telepathy Club just chill out in their room as long as like they're not going to mess with their stuff or whatever. And the Telepathy Club is just kind of a group of kids that want to just kind of lay back, do whatever they want to do, hang out, just kind of have fun. There is, I forget her name, but the girl's kind of goal of meeting psychics and contacting aliens and stuff like that. And there's a whole little mini like subplot with that in season 3 for like 2 episodes. But they're just kind of there, but Mob starts to hang out with them little by little and get to know them, and they also become Mob's friends. And so slowly Mob starts to do things and experience things that he previously didn't think that he would. Like, he's gaining friends, he's improving on himself, he's kind of working on a goal, instead of just kind of sitting there like getting flustered and admiring his crush. He's actually working on trying to get her attention or get in a better place for her to acknowledge him. And that all kind of just comes about from that one interaction, just by accident, kind of. And so that's the Body Improvement Club and the Telepathy Club. They kind of go hand in hand a little bit, but the other big influence on Mob is Reagan. Reagan is the one that kind of put these ideals and teachings into Mob and kind of instilled those in him. The fact that just because you're a psychic doesn't make you special. You still have to work hard and like make yourself stand out and be who you want to be, rather than just let your talent basically make you think that you're special. Reagan may be a liar and a con artist and partially using Mob for his business and stuff, but it's very clear that he cares about Mob, at least to a certain extent, and then that just kind of grows later and later, or more and more rather, to what we see near the end. But Reagan is the one that has probably the most influence over Mob because of how much time he kind of spends with him. Reagan, even though he's not the greatest of people, like, he still, it doesn't mean that he doesn't have good lessons or has any good influence over Mob. In fact, he probably has the best advice that Mob had kind of had up to that point, in the fact of don't use your powers to hurt people, and they don't make you special. You have to make yourself special. And we see them interact the most throughout the show. We see Mob basically doing all these exorcisms for Reagan, and Reagan kind of gaining off of it. And a lot of it comes to a head when Reagan calls Mob on short notice again, when he was asked not to, while Mob was in the middle of celebrating his one friend's birthday. And after the exorcism, Reagan kind of goes off and says, like, his friends don't matter, they're using you, this, that, and the other thing. And Mob, like, gets serious and gets upset, and he's like, no, you're wrong, like, these are my friends, they do care, like, I finally started to find people to hang out with and care about me. And so they kind of split off for a while, and slowly we start seeing the person that Reagan is, where we get his backstory of he just kind of quit his job on a whim and started this business. In fact, the day that Mob came into his office, he was going to quit the exorcism business and move on to something else. But because he found Mob, he found somebody that could be of use and could kind of like build himself up, essentially. And we see Reagan pretty much just kind of break down in a certain way. For a while, he continues the exorcism business, even without Mob, just off of his con artist and smooth talking. He builds up a really good reputation, and he eventually gets on TV, where he gets pretty much exposed for the fake that he is. And after this, things just kind of spiral and spiral until it gets to the point where he has a little conference to kind of address everything. And he has like an introspective where he realizes how much Mob means to him. And, you know, at first he was just kind of using Mob to continue his business, but he gained a friend, something that, from what it looks like, really didn't have any. The one thing that hits really hard for me throughout that whole thing is during the press conference, some reporter or whatever brings up the fact that one of his old papers from school is just titled, "I Want to Be Somebody." And I think we can all relate to that, because we all, in a certain way, want to be somebody. We want to be, you know, somebody of influence. We want to be known for something, essentially. And sometimes people will get their fame, other people won't. Some people will abuse their fame, some people will do horrible things just to get fame. But Reagan realizes that after everything, he finally kind of found somebody to actually call a friend. And so he kind of reaches out to Mob, and during that press conference, like, an earthquake, quote unquote, happens. But it's very much implied that it's Mob, and it's a response to what Reagan's saying during the press conference when he reaches out to him. And afterwards, they have a talk, and Reagan goes to say, "Have you always known that I've been a fake?" But he doesn't say that. He's like, "Have you always known?" And Mom says, "Yeah, I've always known that my teacher is a really good person." And whether Mob knows that Reagan is a fake, which I believe he does, Mob may be gullible and simple-minded in certain aspects, but I genuinely think that Mob knows Reagan is a fake. But that doesn't mean that he hasn't instilled good teachings onto him. It doesn't mean that Reagan's a horrible person. Mob still calls him a friend. He still sees him as his master. And during season 3, one of the biggest, gut wrenchers is during Mob's whole outburst, we see Reagan kind of break down and finally reach him and tell him the truth. Whether Mob knew it or not is irrelevant, because Reagan is admitting it himself. And that's what snaps Mob out of his rage, because, he's finally being truthful with him. The liar, the con artist, the smooth talker, he's being brutally honest. He's like, "I'm not a psychic, I'm a liar, I'm a smooth talker and a con artist. And, there's parts of me that I'm not really a fan of. There's another side of me that I'm not proud of, but I still work every day to still kind of be the person that I want to be and try and improve myself." And Mob has had influence over Reagan to make him feel that way to a certain extent. And again, I think it's really relatable, because we all have different sides of us. We all have things that we're not necessarily proud of. We all have another side of us that, we try and hide and lock away for whatever reason. But it's learning to accept all of your traits and all of your personality and who you are. And it's a tough pill to swallow. The last arc, quote unquote, of Mob Psycho is basically Mob learning to accept himself. His whole rage outburst, we learn, is his other personality essentially taking hold and finally in control, the one that he's been kind of hiding away for so long. And at the end of it, even with all the destruction that he caused, Mob still kind of reaches out and accepts that other part of him, because it's still him. It's still part of who he is. And I think that's really, really inspiring, because it's hard to accept the parts of you that you don't like. It's hard to accept that you're not everything that you want to be, and especially when you haven't done the greatest of things in the past. But it's learning to accept those things, and it's learning to be better and pushing forward to be who you want to be and striving for that. And I think Mob Psycho does a really, really good job of showing how you can take those first steps to accepting yourself and learning how to be who you want to be and how to find whatever goals that you want to and strive for them. Again, Mob Psycho is really good at showing the real parts of our lives and how we all have these things that we want to do. We all have these ways that we feel and what we want to do with ourselves. And some of us haven't figured it out yet. Some of us are still kind of figuring things out and trying to find our path. And what's important is taking the small steps to be the person that you want to be. Even if you only have a small inkling of that, Mob Psycho shows how even the smallest of steps can have the biggest effect on you, your life, and the people around you, and how slowly you can start to figure out who you are and accept that, or even figure out how to become a better person and learn to be who you want to be rather than just who you are. And I think that's really special in the anime world of always fighting for your dreams and never letting people stop you, and those types of messages and themes. I think that those are all really important, but Mob Psycho really hits hard in how real it is, where it's like, yeah, you may not know what you want to do. You may be this person that you may not want to be. You may have these feelings about yourself that you're not necessarily proud of, or whatever the case may be, but it's taking those first steps to become who you want to be. And that's what I think makes Mob Psycho really, really special and really inspiring. So, as always, I hope that you all have a good and wonderful day. Remember to love yourselves, be kind to others, be kind to yourself, and always fight on, fight on, fight on, fight on.